Alright, so here we are. We got the sawmill, as you can see, here on site. Took a little longer than expected yesterday, so we didn't get to do anything other than unload it here. You can see we got the Logosol B751 Pro. Picked it up from Fox Forestry up in Maine yesterday. Now we're going to start laying it out, putting it together here on our oak acres here in New Hampshire, and I'll keep you abreast of the progress along the way. I got the manual, did a little bit of reading on that this morning, and went and picked up some pavers to set it on temporarily. So the idea is we'll once we get the saw set up, we're gonna actually build a saw shed to put the saw in, but we're going to set it up temporarily to saw the lumber for that. So today's task, or start of today's task, is we're going to start putting the saw together. So I'll keep you posted as we go along here and show you some of the steps along the way, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I got the head off. Set it down there out of the way for the moment. I got the crate kind of tore apart here, as you can see, and open up the crate and we get a nice list of all the stuff that's supposed to be in it here, provided from Logosol over there in Sweden. So looks like there's a bunch of parts in here, and I see a bunch of parts. We'll get to putting it together here shortly, but you can see the rails here and the guide rails for the saw head. So I'm going to work on now getting this all out and set up here on the dirt. I did get some concrete pavers to set it on temporarily while we get the structure built. So I will be putting those pavers down. They're here in the truck, as you can see. Concrete pavers. There's also some more parts to the mill up here in the truck. Accessories, the blades, the log turner, the sharpener, the log turner, and some blades came with the saw. A promotion that Logosol's got going on, or Fox Forestry has going on to sell the Logosols here in the U.S. So I'm gonna break out the instruction manual and start getting this thing together. Here we have the instruction manual. Came with the saw, which is says user's manual, but I guess that's in here too. But we get the put it together manual first. So all the parts. I did look this over a little bit at breakfast time, but we'll get to the assembly instructions here. Here we go. So I did have a chance to, like I said, read through this earlier, but we're going to start by putting together the rails. We're going to set them on these concrete pavers. So we're going to dig through our parts and see what we got and put this thing together. Alright, so our first step in the process is we're going to put leveling feet on each of the rail segments. So here's a leveling foot. It came with a just straight nut on it, but we had to replace those with these flange nuts, so I took all the regular nuts off, put one flange nut on, and now I did put one together so I could see how it worked before I turn the camera on. So I'm going to grab one of these rails here. Bring it over here, and you can see there's a little hole here. That leveling foot goes in there, and we can put the nut on the bottom side here. So Let's see if we can't. Pop one of these guys. So you can see in the hole here. We just take one of these nuts and we thread it on. And this will give us up and down adjustment and height once we get it where we want it and figure out where we need to move it up and down to level it. So we got to do this for all 10 of the rail segments we got. And this is the standard package. It comes with 10. You can obviously get more of these. If you wanted to do additional length, you just add on additional rails. So I'm going to assemble, and as you can see now, if you can see up in there, see the nut in there, and we'll do all 10 of those. 2 down, 8 to go. I'll be back with you on the next step. Alright, so we finished the first step, got all the leveling feet in the center of each of the rail segments. Our next piece is going to be to assemble the actual rail frame together, which you can see here. If we look here, there's 4 pins, joint pins, and then there's a nut and bolt that go through to put them together. So let's go over and see what we've done so far. So as you can see, each of the 10 segments has its leveling foot. And over here, we got a box full of these pins and bolts and nuts to put them together. So what's going to happen is, as you can see here, we're going to slide a rail pin, and it's got an actual little groove that you can see here that we can catch on. And then we're going to put 2 of those in each of these. And then what we'll do after we get those in place is we will run bolts. Not sure which bolts, but we'll take a look at the length, which is going to be fairly long. And we'll put the bolts through to connect them together. So what I will do here, slide this one down this way, making sure that we keep them the same orientation. So the ins are ins and the outs are outs. You can see here the joint. We got 2 more pins. Leveling feet. Holes are on the same side, so we got the holes here on the inside, or the outside as the case may be, or as the outside as the case probably is. And then we'll grab one of our bolts. Let's use for this section. Slide the bolt through and put a nut on the end. So we're going to do that for all our sections. So I'm going to take a little time here to put that together. So I'll get 5 of those per side, so we'll get a total of 10 to make up the 2 rails. And once I get those together, I'll show you what we've done. All right, so as you can see, we got all 5 sections of the rails together. This is what the joint looks like once it's all assembled. You can see, making sure that everything lines up. These guys go together like a little puzzle. So all that went well. So 5 per side all together. So let's go take a look at our instructions and see what's next. I believe we have to put cross members in. And there's the finishing of the rail. And now we have, looks like 4 cross members that are going to be put together with these M1290 hex nuts and bolts going into the rail. Looks like our adjusters are on the outside. So that's what we're going to tackle next. We'll see if we can find the parts that we need for this. The cross bunks, the rail attachment holes in the rail should be facing forward. So we get our bolts. Oh, these are going to have 2 nuts. You're going to go on the side facing the feet. All right, so let me get our stuff together for this. Find those cross rails. Let's see if we can get this thing going. End caps. Don't need those just yet. The actual track for the saw. And then we have our bunks. Here. All right, so the bunks are down here. The white ones, looks like they're screwed down, so I'm going to detach those, get those ready to go on, and once I get that figured out, I will show you guys what we got once I get them out of the crate here, and I will probably move the actual rails into almost position because it's going to be tough to move them after we have everything all put together. So I'll be back with you in a few minutes once I get that stuff set. All right, so we're going to be putting these plates on here. They're going to go obviously not like that. They're going to go up like that. Well, of course it falls over, but that's okay. And basically before we do that, they actually did a pretty cool little thing here. So see how we got this nut on the bolt? That's because these bolts will go through they'll go through the side. See, there's a little hole right here. They're going to go through there, and then they stick out the other side. And the idea is that they'll be flush on the outside here, and they'll stick out on this side, giving us the ability to put the plate on here. And then once we put the plate on there, we'll be able to put the nut on, and it'll be flush out here, which will hold it so we can tighten it up. So that's what I'm gonna do now. So as you can see, with the plate on this side over here, these bolts are essentially flush with the outside, and it allows us to tighten them up, which I'm going to do right now on this first one. And then with that all tightened up, nothing sticks out on this side. We didn't have to put a wrench on that side, and it's nice and flush. So I'm going to put the remainder of these on this one, and then I can get the blocks lined up for the other side. You see I put the blocks temporarily under this rail. What I'm going to do is get this side up, and then we'll do some leveling with the leveling feet, and we'll get it so that this whole rail is level both side to side and long ways. Alright, so I was doing this and I noticed an error that I just made that I will try to stop you guys who happen to want to be doing this from making. You'll notice that there's 5 feet and the cross bunks here go in front of those feet. Well, except for the first one, because we have the saw head down here. The saw is going to be running from this end down here all the way down that way. So we don't need one underneath the saw head at the beginning. We need it moved out one. So we only have 4. You don't need one on the very end where the saw head's going to start. So I'm going to take that one and move it down to the next one, so you don't have to make the same mistake that I did. Alright, so let's take a look at what we got so far here. We got the cross bunks on here, all 4 of them. I did, as I mentioned before, I did have this one in the wrong position. I had it up here where it doesn't need to be. And the other thing that I had to think about a little bit was the direction that we're going. You'll note that these guys have a stop right here, so when you get your cant, it's going to sit against that stop, so you don't have to put in the stops on the backside. So I wanted that on this left-hand side over here. Saw's going to move from this end down towards the other end once we get it all in place. So that dictates the direction that these are going to go on. It also says in the instructions to make sure that you're putting them on this way. But and you can see that they do line up just in front of the feet at each location, which is basically the center of the rail section, being that the tie ends in between them are in the middle of each of these. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the end plates on. So there's one for down here, goes on this end, and then there's another one down at the other end. And if we look over here at the instructions, they give us a method of doing so. We're going to pop on a couple of these bolts, these guys here, that are going to go through the plate in the top, and that's going to sit into a slot by the looks of it on the side of the rail. And then we also have a bunch of bolts here, this bag full, that are for the actual rail that's going to go up on top, at the track basically for the saw. So I'm going to work on these two end plates first, and then I'll get back to you with the rails once we get there. Okay, so a couple of things we've done here. So you'll note that we put the bolts in the bottom of these. We got these bolts in here. Note the nut is not on the right way. Well, it is on the right way because it's going to hold the rail on top, but it's not currently attached all the way. I then took out the little torpedo level here, and I just leveled the whole thing up, both side to side. So there we go, level, end to end, all the way down through, and side to side, with leveling feet, which worked out pretty well. They actually have in here, I don't know if you can see it down in there, they have a little hex head bit that you can put on there, and you put the bit down in there and you spin it and it levels them out. So you can see we got the whole thing leveled up, like I said, both directions, end to end and side to side. It's a little bit on some uneven ground, which is kind of a pain. Means we got some legs that are up higher than others, but it seems pretty solid regardless. Then the next thing that we had to do is in each of these little slots down through here, we did the same thing with the backwards nut, and then we set them in the slot, and that's where the rail is going to go here momentarily once I find them, which we're going to go over and take a look right now for all of those rail pieces, which are still over here on the side. So we have a couple different lengths, and I'll have to look at the instructions a little more to know how they go. But we got these. And then we have, so that's one length, which are pretty long. Then we have some medium ones. Set those there. Those. Then we have these. Medium length. Oh no, I guess those are the same length as those. So we have those long ones. Not quite the same length. They're a little bit different. We have these short ones. So the short ones there. And then we also have one more set of longer ones. That are similar, if not the same, as those others. So we have three different ones. Those longer ones on the outside there, we got a bunch of those. We got these other four with a little bit different ends, and we have these four short ones. So next is to figure out where all these go, and start popping those in place, and then we'll get those leveled up as well. So we're making progress here. It's been a half a day's project so far. I did have to take a little break and do some walking in the woods with one of my colleagues. Lay out some lines for the clearing we're going to be doing. But we are well on our way here with the saw. I'm going to get these rails figured out, sorted, and if I find anything special along the way with those, I'll let you know. But so far, so good. We're leveled up, and we're putting those rails on. Alright, so here we go on this. Here's the instructions. So we see that we had those bolts already in there. We have a short rail, we have a long rail, and then we have this little filler piece. So I'll take you over here. I did one side already. You can see that this side here is attached, at least the first section. Not fully tightened down yet because we got some work to do, but I wanted to show you how this went together. So first things first, we have the short piece here.
and that gets set in. And that's actually the inside piece. And then we have the outside rail, the longer one here. You see that is going to be the outside of all that. This drops right in, and then this little filler piece back here just sets in, and then we can just hand tighten these. So basically, on the inside of the thing, the nuts come into the slots, and it allows us to tighten them down. We don't want to tighten them all the way down yet because we have more work to do in leveling these. But so the rails are going to end up. So I had to do a little persuading of that one, but the rails are going to end up being too wide all the way down through. So we want to make sure we have room to do that. So the next long rail is going to go on the inside of that next section. So I'm going to go grab a couple more of these, and we see that we also have the ones for the other end, which we'll get to in a little bit. But we'll grab a stack of these guys, and we can start laying them in. So long ones again, but they're a little bit different. And then we need to make sure we go all the way back. And then we make sure that they drop into place appropriately. All the way into place. And then we just continue that process. So you can see that that one's there is on the inside. So this next one here goes on the outside. And then we put one on the inside. And make sure that we get them all the way back to where they belong. And then this one here will go on the outside. And this one here goes on the inside. And if you get a spot that seems a little snug, sometimes it takes a little persuasion. So we just keep going on down the line here, getting these guys in place, making sure that we overlap. And that everything is lining up. And then we're at the end, which has the different ones. So then we'll use the end one. Just put the end one in. And then we have the end short one. Oh, we gotta adjust here because this guy wasn't closed. So we'll just see the end here. Make sure that this guy is closed up so that when we get that nut in there, the whole rail fits. And then it's just like that all the way down through. So I'll do the same on the other side. We'll tighten those up a little bit, and then there's a step to make sure that everything's level, that everything's going to ride appropriately down through there, and I'll take you through that in a little bit. So that's the rail. Pretty straightforward, pretty neat little thing. I do have to put another one of these guys in down here at the end as well. fill in this gap. And that's when we tighten it. It doesn't squeeze the metal on the end. So that's that. Okay, so we got the rails all on. I got them all leveled up. I'll show you a little bit of what we did there. So you can see I tied this string here that goes along the rail and it goes all the way down to the other end. You can see it kind of riding along the top of the rail. In the instructions it says that that piece is going to stick up above and you have to measure down. But I don't know how they made that happen. It rides basically right along the top of the rail. Lines up pretty much perfectly. So I just leveled everything right to the string. It is pretty darn level all the way down through there. I think the critical piece of this is before you even start leveling that, to make sure your base is level. So I got the base level prior to starting this, and a few minor adjustments here and there. The rails where they come together, sometimes it came up a little bit and I just had to give it a little tap back down. But other than that, we are on the final assembly step of the rail system, and that is to put on these attachments here, which are going to attach on right here. And what these guys will do is they will allow us to lock the logs in. So when we get that on, the Logosol log clamps fit right in there, and we can lock them in. So I'm going to go ahead and get those on and get my string cleaned up. Then we'll go from there, see what our next step in the process is. But this is the last step, as the book says here, for the rails. So I can show you. Looks like we've flipped back a few pages here. Show you in the book where we're at here. So there's the string. So note they show you it's up above the rail a little bit. I did not have it up above the rail a little bit. There was no gap there. Here's the final assembly of the rail. It's putting these guys on, and then there's these flange lock things that are used to lock on the log stops for the back. And I'll get those installed as well, and then I'll show you once it's done if there's any issues I ran across or anything that we need to be aware of. So see you guys in a little bit. Okay, so we since we last did the video, which was a little bit ago, a couple of things have happened. The first is we moved the saw head into position, so it's just sitting. Just picked it up with the backhoe and set it down on the rails, making sure that I see very well, but get down here. There's these roller bearings, and then the roller itself sits right on top of the metal rail, so you can see it slides back and forth pretty easily. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put on the anti-tip plates. So it says to take off these bolts here, nuts here, which it says are on the inside, but clearly they're on the outside. But I'm not sure that it matters, though it may. I'm not positive what to expect here. So I'm going to go with it for the moment. I'm building those anti-tip rollers now. You can see here in the book it says here that remove the flange nuts on the inner side of the bogey base. And it looks like in the picture they're on the inner side, but mine are on the outer side, the nuts. The bolts are on the inner side, and in order to fix that, I'd have to lift the head back up off the base. So maybe they put it together wrong at the factory. I'm going to guess they probably did. So I'm going to see what I can do, either wedging up the base so I can get those turned around and get the wheels on the inside where they belong, or I don't know yet. So we'll see here in a minute what transpires. But right now I'm just going to put together these plates. It says to put the wheels on. Over here you can see we got the setup that we need for that, which is a roller, ball, and a bushing, and a washer. And then there's a nut that's going to go on, which I'm sure I set somewhere here. Oh, right here. And goes on these plates. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll be back with you. Let you know what I come up with on this inner versus outer thing. I think I'm going to have to flip those, which means they were not put together right at the factory. But let's find out. All right, so they do go on the outside. They have no choice. Though the bolts would have slipped through, and I could have put them on the inside, or attempted to put them on the inside. If you notice, the rail for the saw head actually sits outside, not inside, so the inside wouldn't work. It has to actually go on the outside. Otherwise, the spacers would need to be up here, not down there on the wheels. So they're all installed. Basically, you just unbolt these bolts right here, these nuts. There's one in the front, one in the back. Then adjust the wheels up. So I'll send the camera down here. So you adjust these wheels up so that they're touching. That stops the saw head from rolling side to, or being able to go side to side, tip over, which it's on there pretty sturdy. So now that the saw head is put together, or on the thing, the final saw head instructions say basically that we have to assemble the control arm and put the engine on. So that's what we're going to do next. And you may notice I got a couple of parts left over from our last installation. That's because apparently I used the wrong bolts somewhere. These require 25 millimeter long bolts, and all I have is either 16 or 20 millimeter bolts left. So somewhere along the way I must have used a 25, so what I'll do is I'll pick some of those up at the hardware store. It's just 4 of them, so I'll pick some of those new ones up. But here we go. We're going to assemble the control arm and put that together, and then we'll get the control arm in place so that we can raise and lower the saw head. And then after we do that, we'll come back and we'll do the engine, but we'll make sure the saw head's in place first. So I'll get that all situated, and I will come back to you. All right, so we got the handle on. So you can see here, handle is attached. We also put the T-handle on down here, the tensioner for the blade. So that's all installed. A couple of things to note here. This hose that comes out here, which is just to give us a gauge of how full the tank is. If you look back here, it runs essentially through the middle of this chain. As near as I can figure, that was the best place to put it. There's a chain tensioner up here that tensions the chain so that it doesn't rub here and isn't loose. So it's fairly snug right now. And then there's the fill tube, or the water drip tube, that runs down through the little adjuster over here on the side for how much water you're gonna have. Handle went on, 4 bolts. There's 2 nuts, 2 bolts here, and then there's 2 through hex bolts that stick out on the other side. Put the nuts on those. So our next step and last step in the process is to put the missing piece in here, which is the engine, which is right now over here in a box. So I'm going to work on that, and then there's still a fair amount of adjustment that we'll have to do once we get everything set. So stay tuned, more to come. But I'm gonna try to get this engine mounted, fairly easy to mount on the platform. Just 4 bolts hold it down, and then I don't know from there because I don't recall the instructions. So you can see that there's four bolts, 4 hex bolts, with washers that mount that to the engine plate. You can see the mounting top view. And then we have a variety of other safety switch, and we got the centrifugal clutch we have to put on. So there's still a fair amount of work to do. We're going to continue and see how much further we can get today. Engine is mounted. Like I said, just four bolts. You can see from the bottom there, mounted up through. There are a bunch of holes that it could line up with, but they do give you the diagram to make sure that it's lined up properly. So that's the engine. Now there's a whole bunch of other assembly pieces that we got to throw on, including next is our interlock safety switch hinge, which we're going to install so we don't accidentally try to open the door for the blade while the saw is running. It'll automatically shut it off. And then there's the handle and throttle cable that will mount, and then the centrifugal clutch that will also mount. And then after that's the belt, the drive belt. And then a couple other things, the throttle. I don't know what other things there are here, but there's some other items. Running the throttle cable, hooking up the safety switch, and then hooking up the battery. So we'll get all this stuff ready to go. All right, so the saw assembly is 99% done. So let me show you what we've done here in the last little bit. So we installed the throttle and the throttle cable, and as you can see, the throttle cable actually runs over here. I gotta figure out exactly where I'm gonna keep it there, but that's where it runs. It runs around. We took the old throttle off the engine, so we don't need that. Probably should put that bolt back in, which I'll do. I think it was this one. Nope, not that one. I'll find the right one here in a minute. But as you can see in here, we connected the throttle cable in, and then there's a little metal hook there that hooks the throttle, and when we press it, it does the throttle properly, hopefully, as I just popped off the little metal hook. Get that back in place. There we go. So I'll try that out once we get that. Then the other thing that I haven't quite finished yet is this safety on the hinges. I gotta connect a couple of wires. One goes up here to this black connector, and then the other one goes down here to this bolt, which I haven't yet connected. I'll get that hooked up. And I do need to get a battery for the electric start, because this engine is equipped with it. I just don't have the battery at the moment. Whoops. So I'm going to call it a day. Pick up my tools here, get everything organized back the way it should be, and put that one bolt back in that I know needs to go back in. And as I mentioned earlier, I do need to find that I gotta go get 4 8 by 22 or 20 millimeter or 25 millimeter rather, to attach the log support holders. So what we'll do tomorrow, and I've watched a couple of videos on this already, we'll go through adjusting the saw and getting the blade on, and hopefully we'll be able to fire it up here tomorrow before too long. So I will keep you posted on that, and that's it for today. Okay, here we are back down at the sawmill. Gonna finish up a couple of things. Last night I went and got those 2 extra bolts I needed to put the locks on these plates. So I'm gonna put those on, and then there's just a couple little things left on the engine. I gotta hook those 2 wires up, and then make sure the engine's all prepped and ready to go. I did not get a battery yesterday, so maybe I'll go do that today, or we'll just manually start it. We'll get her fired up and see how it goes. Okay, so what we got going now, I got those bolts that I was missing, and we're gonna start doing some adjustments on the blade to make sure, or on the wheels to make sure that the blade tracks correctly. I'm going to show you a couple of things right now. It's just as it came from the factory at the moment, which I wholly suspected it was going to be all out of alignment, which it is. But let me show you these log supports that we put in, which was the bolts I was missing. So these are the bolts that were missing. They weren't missing. I put them in somewhere else on the machine. But right now, what we got going on, as you can see here, is these guys are in here. This black little lever here you see, this is actually a cam, and that cam allows this to move to be square. So I've squared this up here so that everything from this bunk up here is square. So when we put our logs here and we cut, we will have a square edge to cut against. And these guys, it comes with 2 different ones. Comes with the long one, and it also comes with a shorter one. So you can see. So if we're doing bigger logs, we use the tall ones. And then if we're doing smaller logs, we can use short ones. And there's 2 of those. So I put one up close to the saw, and then one back here. We'll see how that goes. We might have to adjust. And then also drop these guys in. These are the log clamps, the Logosol log clamps, and we'll see those in action later on. I did pop the blade on here, and I didn't tension it fully. I just tightened it up just a little bit so I could see how the tracking was working here. And I don't know if you can see this, but the blade is actually right now tracking right off the saw. So we'll have to make some adjustments to get that to track properly, to get back on. So on the back side of this wheel, you can see here are the adjusters that go both back and forth and up and down. So we can make the wheel square up to the blade. So we'll make them perpendicular. And then the other wheel has the same. So those are the adjustments I'm going to be making now. So I will do that adjustment, and we'll move forward from there. All right, so we've adjusted the blade. So as you can see here, when I spin this around, it tracks. And if you look at the drive belt or the belt on this side of the blade over here, the blade runs, the center of the meat of the blade runs right in the center of this belt. The adjustments are done back here. So there's both tilt up and down as well as an in and out. And it was off both in and out and up and down. I did adjust. I used the level against the side of the blade to adjust the up and down. And then the in and out, I just used the blade, put the blade on, let it track, adjusted in and out so that it was correct. So now, as far as the instructions go, we got the blade tensioned, as you can see here, lined up the little mark with the orange. They call it red, but it looks kind of orangish to me. But anyway, it's adjusted there. They say to start the engine. So what I'm going to do, I just put some fuel in it. We do have to close this guy up for safety purposes. We will lock her in place. Crank it up a couple of turns here. Just allow us to close this guy up appropriately. Something's hitting. Not sure what. That side locks. Oh, we're hitting. Something's not right here. Hitting on the guide. I think that's supposed to be on the inside of that. That's why we were hitting. So we lock this guy back into place. Alright, so that's all locked in. So there's a latch right here that locks it in, as well as two, one on each side. There's one here and one on the other side to lock it in place. And this has to be extended all the way out in order for the door to close or open. Once it's open or closed, you can slide that back. So I haven't yet started the engine. I did check the oil. I don't have the electric start, so I'm going to try to manually start it. I put some fuel in, close the cover up here, and then we'll give her a couple of tugs and see what happens. So clearly I'm missing something, maybe because I'm not putting up the electric start. Let me get out the manual. I'll be back with you. Okay, so simple solution. This fuel line was closed. Probably should have checked that. But let's go ahead and fire her up. Done that, what we have to do is we got to come back over to the front here. Open this guy back up. And it's got this little hook here that holds the top up, so you can work on it. Now we're just checking for the tracking of the blade, make sure that it hasn't moved. So we see here we're pretty centered on this wheel. Everything looking good so far. Once again over here, pretty centered on this wheel as well. So I think we're good with that step, and now we know it works. Alright, I think all the adjustments are done. The last one I just did is making sure that the blade front to back was level. Not level necessarily, but the same down the rail, which it's pretty darn close. So basically to do that, I use this bunk, take a measurement from the front end of the level that's across it, and then slide it forward and take a measurement from the back end of the bunk that's across it. And then to adjust, there's these right here, and that adjusts the guide wheels so that that blade will be level or straight, flat. So when we make cuts, we don't have weird cuts. So with that being said, we are now ready. I'm going to put some water in it and put a log on it, and we'll make our first cut. So I will get you set up, get the saw set up, put the log on, put the log stops on first, put a log on, and we'll make a cut and see what happens. log turner. Don't know, haven't played with it too much yet, but it was thrown in with the saw. We'll see how it goes. Alright, so I got a log on the log bunk here. You can see it's not hitting on this end. I'm going to turn that to fix that. Log's not exactly the straightest one in the world. I figured I'd start with a not so good one, as this is the first log I've ever milled up on any sawmill. So we'll see how it goes. I will probably, I don't know, I'll probably just flatten out, because that's bumped up quite a bit there. Which is going to be a problem in the long run for this log. But let's see what happens. Now, this is the small end of the log down here, and if the log was not crooked, didn't have that bend in it, I might be concerned about jacking up this end a little bit, but I think because of the way the log is, I'm not going to be too concerned about that. I am going to make sure that I don't hit my log stops back here. They seem to be like they're clear, and notice I did use the Logosol log clamp here, clamp that log into place. So get ready, I got to put some water in and we'll make our first cut. Alright, so that's cut number one. Looks decent. I don't know, might maybe have gone down a little bit more, but what I'm going to do now is turn it 180 degrees, get the flat side down, and we'll make a cut on the other side. So I've got top and bottom of the log cut. You'll note that we're going to end up with not much on out of this log, but because of that massive bend in it. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to take I don't know. I think I'll take off, try to get just a couple of boards out of the middle of it, maybe, just to see. Like I said, this is the first log. I picked a pretty crappy one off the pile just because I knew it was the first. Didn't know what to expect. And I got to remember to shut the water off when I'm done. But we see that it's got a major bow in it. So that is going to take a lot off this log. Oh well, that is what it is. Live and learn. So here we go. All right, so we got it all cut. I didn't do my measurements quite right, so we ended up with an 1.5 inch board, an 1.25 inch board, and a inch board. But that's okay because I didn't think I was going to get much of anything out of it. And you can see down at this other end that the two on this side, which were off the top, I just set it down next to it. Figure why not at least try to get something out of it. Looks like we'll get a pretty decent length 1 inch board. The 1.25 inch, not so good, but it's something maybe for some scrap or some blocking or something like that. Obviously, as I move forward with this, I'm going to work to get better at the scales and that kind of stuff. Today was just kind of a test with the saw. Cuts through like butter. Can't complain certainly about the saw working. It works. I'm going to attach the clip on the bottom. There's one here on the front that I could lock the saw at the far end. I could lock the saw down here. And I also, which I might just do for today, there's also, they gave me an extra clip that I could put on so I can lock it down at that end, which seems more likely the place I would lock it normally. But I think that's it for today. I'm going to wrap up here, throw a tarp over the top of the saw for now. Ideally what's going to happen is we're going to mill up the lumber to build a permanent home for the saw where we can mount it to the floor, a nice flat level floor, build the log bunks. So stay tuned. I'll keep you abreast of the progress on that, and thanks for tuning in.